Brandon Sanderson's second secret project is officially out. Don't worry, I won't be talking about it in this video at all. But in celebration of that, we are going to be discussing my top 10 Cosmere characters. Actually, that's a lie. We're going to be discussing my top 10 characters in all of Brandon Sanderson's work, because there is one Starsight character in here. But it's almost exclusively a top 10 Cosmere list. It's fine, just the title is fine. Anyway, if you do want to talk about the most recent secret project release, if you want to talk about that book on my second channel where I do reviews, I will be doing a dedicated review for that book either on Tuesday or Wednesday, just depending on how long it takes me to read the book. So link to the second channel is in the description of this video. That'll be up soon, but we're not talking about it in this video, don't worry. It was extremely hard to create a list of only 10, so I have cheated a little bit, but it's just a little cheats, it's gonna be fine. This entire video is going to be spoiler free, so it's safe to watch it even if you haven't read every book that I'll be talking about, if you haven't read from every character that I'll be talking about. However, I will have on the screen for when each character is introduced, I'll have on the screen the book or series or multiple books and series that they appear in, so that if you don't want to know anything about a certain series that you haven't read yet, you can have that warning on the screen and use the timestamps in the description to skip. The first character on this list is my big cheat, but there's a reason behind it. There's logic here. The first character that I'll be mentioning is Vin / Spensa / Lyft. Hear me out. Hear me out. There's logic behind this. Vin would make it on this list alone regardless. Spensa and Lyft probably wouldn't, but I want to talk about them together because it's important to me to explain to you why these characters mean so much to me. I'll talk about Spensa because I've talked about this enough times before that I feel I can keep it brief, but Spensa is teenage Murphy. Spensa being closed off, having her walls up, being defensive, holding people at arm's length, the way she's dealt with the trauma that she's dealing with in this book, the way she deals with it by being so guarded and by being so tough and by shutting the world out is the way teenage Murphy dealt with her trauma. If you want to see what like 15-year-old Murphy looked like, read Spensa in book 1. There she is. And I got the opportunity to tell Sanderson this exact thing in a video that I did with him recently where I made him tier list his own books, and that got a great reaction out of him. But in all the many books that I've read, I have never related to a teenage girl character like I have Spensa. On that same note, Vin, who would be on this list even if I weren't making it so, if I weren't drawing how relatable some of these characters are, she'd make it on the list anyway. I love Vin. The way she kind of curls up into herself and curls up into a ball and makes herself as small as possible, tries to be inconspicuous, tries to just kind of disappear from the room, as well as the way that she, even as she gets more powerful and stronger and more confident in herself, how she still second guesses everything and still has a lot of back and forth in her own head. Just very relatable to coming out of teenager Murphy. I still haven't met adult Murphy yet in a book. I still haven't actually seen myself as I am now in a story, but if I'm ever going to, it's probably going to be written by Sanderson, and I'm not gonna lie, there's a little bit of an identity complex that I have that stems from the fact that this middle-aged man has written many aspects of me so well in books, like better than any other author I've seen. It's very confusing to me. Anyway, then there's Lyft, who is inner child Murphy, basically. Like even now, my inner child that sometimes just wants to pop out and be awesome, there's Lyft. This whole list isn't about me, but I do think it's important, at least for me, it's important to express how incredibly relatable I find some of his female characters. Like, essential pieces of who I am are somehow there. It's confusing, honestly. Vin, at least as far as my list goes, Vin deserves to be here on her own because of how strong she is, because of how much she's gone through, and how far she comes, because of how she learns to trust and learns to grow and lead, and all of her failings and setbacks, and I just really admire her, but I also I really relate to her too. Next on this list is Hoid, but before we talk about Hoid, a stick is going to tell you about today's sponsor, Wraithmart. I I am a stick, here to tell you about Wraithmarked Creative's newest project. Not a book, they've partnered with Travis Baldree, New York Times bestselling author of Legends and Lattes, to offer enamel pins. Each of the hard enamel pins were custom illustrated by Christina Hassan and will be roughly 1.5 to 2 inches tall. They come with a silver-plated backing that makes the colors really pop and a polished glass resin coating to help with scratch resistance. And they have a double clasp back to make it much harder for them to fall off your bag, jacket, wherever they go. You can get the shop crest and the wreathed black blood pins separate, or if you sign up for the entire kit, then you'll get these as well as a deluxe signed bookmark by Travis and the cozy thimble pin, each with a unique serialization on the back. Plus, if you use the code in my description, it helps the channel out. Don't you think they should check out the Kickstarter? No. Yes. Oh, yes. Links in the description. Back to the video. Anyway, next on this list is Hoid, and check the tags because I will be talking about him in relation to Tress as well. Spoiler free, but you know, I know that people are still looking to avoid spoilers for Tress at the moment. I don't always jive with Sanderson's humor or the way he writes wit on page, not wit the character, wit, like the wittiness on page, and we'll talk about that later in this video, but Hoid is an example of something that never misses for me, and it doesn't matter in what role he plays, whether he's being the banter-heavy side character that he is in Stormlight, whether he's delivering some bit of wisdom or helping a character work through her trauma and what she's been through, whether he's telling an abstract story or one that holds a lot of weight that I want to explore further. Even as he is in Tress, which is completely different, a very different format that I've ever seen him in, a very different way that I've ever seen him, it still was just not a miss for me on every page. Even when he's just randomly a carriage driver that's here to say a couple of silly lines and then run away. He's just always a hit for me. Tie all that into the fact that he holds so many mysteries for this story. He holds so many answers. He knows so much that I will likely never know. He's been everywhere. He's seen seemingly everything. And I know when we do get that Hoid backstory, it's gonna be one of the most intense things that Sanderson's written. A lot of people don't trust Hoid. I trust him with my life. And if that means that I'm gonna be stabbed in the back someday, so be it. I love a good backstabbing plot. Next on this list is Jasnah. Another character that some people love and some people hate. I love her. I appreciate characters that are written to be intentionally pretty rough around the edges, but that have so much value. She's incredibly smart. She can see through what people need from her and will respond accordingly, whether that means being dismissive to a person on purpose in order to kind of force them to respond, force them to test their resolve. She's a straight character where she's very serious, she's very smart, and responds to the world in such a logical way. I don't agree with everything that she does, but I don't have to in order to like a character. And I think that she is such a fascinating character to follow, such an empowering character to read about. And again, so much of the story is going to be unraveled through her. Someday when we get a backstory for her, someday when we get more information on her, I have a feeling that the more I learn about her, she's just gonna be a character that I will continue to love more and more and more the more I get to hang out with her. Next up, Navani, another character that comes off as pretty unlikable, especially when we're first introduced to her. Another character that I do not always agree with her actions. And in fact, there are times where she kind of pushes herself on people and on characters in the series that I feel are quite inappropriate. But again, I don't have to morally agree with everything that a character does in order to appreciate them and to think that they're a very strong character. And Navani is a very strong character, not only in the role that she plays for the story and the role that she plays for Dalinar as a character, but also in the role that she plays as just an incredibly intelligent person who is fascinating to watch her mind work and watch her work through problems. I find her really inspiring as an individual in the way that she has handled a lot of domestic issues, keeping it spoiler free. I talked about this in my Oathbringer review specifically. There were a couple of lines that Navani gave that just really I find very inspiring. Pretty sure it was the Oathbringer. I'm almost positive it was the Oathbringer review. But I also just think that she's another character that's kind of rough around the edges, and I can understand why she might grate on people, especially because there are definitely times where I wouldn't call her like a woe is me character, but there are definitely times where she's willing to acknowledge that life is hard. But I think that there are plenty of characters that do that. I've seen this complaint, and I just feel like, you know, it's okay to complain sometimes. I feel like she's earned the right to complain here and there. But I personally, as far as a character that isn't one of our mains, but that is getting more and more page time as the series progresses, she's a character that I simply find to be fascinating and inspiring. I love Navani. I love her so much. Next up is Pattern. Pattern is a great example, or leads me into a great example of Sanderson's humor being his humor and his display of wittiness being very hit or miss for me, because I find Shallan to be near insufferable. I think her story is fantastic. I love her backstory. I love her struggles. I mean, I don't love her struggles, but I love reading about her struggles. And her arc, like everything on paper is amazing about her story. But I find her, the person, insufferable. And a big piece of me finding her so annoying is because she's just supposed to be so witty, and I find her very dull. She'll say something that's either only mildly interesting or just outright cringy, and people will fall all over themselves to tell her how witty she is. Again, I've talked about this extensively in my reviews. I'm pretty sure the Oathbringer review is when I really went hard on it because in Words of Radiance, people came back and they were like, well, she's supposed to be cringy. That's the point. No, it's not. People fall all over themselves to say, you're so witty, and she's not. And she thinks she's so witty too when she's not. I feel like half the time I'm hanging out with her, I'm in one of her perspectives, she'll say something and then just like immediately pat herself on the back because it was so clever. But she's not. Anyway, that's an example of Sanderson writing wittiness in a way that just really doesn't work for me, wittiness and humor and lightheartedness. But then you have Pattern, who essentially saves all Shallan POVs. Because he's hilarious. He's so much fun. The way he thinks about the world, the way he processes the world, the way he responds to situations, his brand of making everything awkward is brilliant. There's so many lines that Pattern says that make me actually laugh out loud while I'm reading. Anytime Pattern is talking, I'm listening. Anytime Shallan's talking, I'm probably making a very angry face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to those who love Shallan. This doesn't even belong in this video. I just have so much bitterness inside of me toward her. Anyway, I love Pattern because I love his character, but he makes my top list because he saves Shallan's perspectives for me. Not only, the thing is, I think that Shallan is such an interesting story. I just don't like her as a character, and Pattern makes it easier for me to enjoy her story because he makes her perspectives so much fun. Oh man, please don't be mad at me over that. Next is another character that's difficult to talk about spoiler-free, so I'll just say Vin's Wolfhound. I love a side character that is very loyal to a main character. I love a side character that has a lot of intrigue and mystery wrapped up in him. We learn so much about a specific group of people that fascinate me. This group of people fascinate me. I love a certain storytelling device that I can't actually say in this video, because we're keeping it spoiler free, it's in his story, and that's naturally gonna make me like him more. I found him fascinating. I thought that he was so much fun to follow. I loved his personal arc. I'll leave it at that. I love him so much. Next up is Taravangian, which is one that I'll keep brief because I think that it's basically impossible to talk about him spoiler free. So super brief with him, but he's fascinating. Every page we get of him, I'm on the edge of my seat because I just want to know what he's gonna be like today and what he's going to say. And even on his bad days, a lot of the stuff that he says it's very thought-provoking. The conversations with him are deep and meaningful no matter what day you catch him on. Keeping it spoiler-free, I feel like that's really all I can say, but he is one of the most interesting characters Sanderson has written, in my opinion. One of the most fascinating characters to interact with, even though we don't get an extreme amount of interactions with him. Just who he is so fascinating to me. Next up is Szeth, which is another character that I'm gonna have to keep brief because it's very difficult to talk about spoiler-free, but his internal struggle is very compelling to me, and his personal journey that we've been able to witness so far has been one of the most interesting journeys of a side character that I've read from Sanderson so far. I just find him so compelling, and what little I know about his story and his personal struggle, I find so compelling. And I expect that after book 5, my opinions on him are only going to be deepened. It's probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most about book 5. Next up is Kaladin, and it is going to be considered a mortal sin to a lot of you to have Kaladin so low in my, I mean, there's a lot of characters, and there's a lot of characters that I find that I relate to on a personal level, or that I just think are so fascinating that they have to be really high up on the list. But there's a lot of really great characters. It's kind of hard, okay? Especially Kaladin from books 1 and 2. His, again, internal struggles, his personal journey, what he has to work through, what he has to face against, who he becomes, the strength that he develops, and the leadership abilities that he steps into. He's just a really inspiring character. He's just an incredibly inspiring character. And I still enjoy him in books 3 and 4 as well, but it's books 1 and 2, Kaladin, that I'm just genuinely amazed by. I know a lot of people relate to a lot of what happens with him in books 3 and 4, especially book 4, and I think that that's amazing. And I'm very excited to see what we do with him in book 5. I'm very excited to see where his journey takes us. But the thing that I connect to the most about Kaladin is his strength, his resilience, his resolve, who he becomes, especially in books 1 and 2, man. He's an inspiring character to me. Now we're in spot 10, and I still haven't actually decided who belongs here because I have a list of characters that I want to put in spot 10. It's very hard to pick one. I'm gonna go with Rock. It's a strange choice, but it's what my gut is telling me is true. Rock is a side character that is simply a ray of sunshine. Again, he gives us a peek into another group of people that I find very fascinating. His personal story, what little we know about it, just adds so much to who he is and the way he views the world and the way he interacts with people. The more you learn about him, the more he just becomes a delight, a treat. Every page that he's on, every line that he says makes me smile. He's just a delight to read about, and I love him. I love him more than I have any right to love a character that gets the amount of page time that he gets, but I think it's honest. I think it's the most honest thing I could do to put him in my top 10 list. And here comes my final cheat. My final cheat in this video is to tell you that this list was so hard to make because characters like Dalinar really needed to be on this list, but there weren't enough slots. But his personal, again, I don't agree with so many things that he's done and said, and he's not But his story is so fascinating. Characters that are just really easy to love, like Renarin and Steris, that they're like my people. I just want to bring them in for a hug. Characters like Marsh, Breeze, Nightblood that I just can't get enough of. And so many more. I know this is a top 10 list and I just spouted off a bunch of names, but I could keep spouting because there's so many fascinating characters that I love so much, and a top 10 list is hard. But that is my top 10. Those are my people that, at least for now, are in my list. This is obviously an incredibly subjective thing, so please let me know what your list would look like. What are your top 10 if you can manage to make it one? You can make it for the Cosmere, you can make it for just anything that Sanderson has written. I'm curious to know who you love the most or who you relate to the most. Again, if you're interested in chatting with me about the Second Secret Project book, there will be a review up on my second channel either on Tuesday or Wednesday, so check that out if you feel like it. Look out for that. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the second channel. I'll see you again soon. Bye.